tú eres muy malo, roto el pato de vestuario. La interpretación siempre negativa, nunca positiva.
Welcome to Siempre Positivo as Barcelona go into the international break with a bump, beaten 4-1 at Sevilla on Sunday as they ceded top spot in La Liga to Real Madrid. I'm Sam Marsden, joined by Rik, Peque Sharma and Toni Juan Marti. Rik, how are you?
Good. Sam's referring to Peque, the Sevilla forward, because I've named my Zoom call name after him today. I usually try and put a different name every time we're on the call for some topical reason.
Yeah, and Peque, of course, sent off in stoppage time for Sevilla. Now playing for Sevilla. Used to play for Barca.
Sent off and then unsent off. Wasn't sent off
Sent
in
off
the end,
and then unsent
obviously.
off, yeah. But yeah, used to play for Barca Juvenil. Then I think he scored lots of goals at Racing Santander and is now at Sevilla, but not quite up to the level of Sevilla, I don't think. It was second season there, so we'll say still young. Tony, ¿qué tal?
¿Qué tal? Hello everybody. Good afternoon. All fine, all good.
Looking forward to seeing how you put a spin on yesterday's game. Barcelona beaten for the first time in La Liga this season on a day when both the unbeaten records left in the Spanish top flight crumbled. First Elche beaten by Alaves and then Barcelona losing at Sevilla. One was a bigger shock than the other, and that's what we're going to talk about, of course. Barca's loss at the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan against Sevilla, and there will be few complaints because they were well beaten. They were 2-0 down in the first half. A controversial penalty given away by Ronald Araujo and converted by veteran striker and former Barcelona player Alexis Sanchez, but it was probably all Sevilla deserved on the balance of play over the first sort of 25-30 minutes. They created and missed a lot of chances in that period which followed the penalty, especially Isaac Romero missed quite a few before eventually doubling Sevilla's lead in the 37th minute. It could have been 3-4, maybe 5-0 to stretch, but it could have been 3 or 4 going into half-time. Instead, it was 2-1 because Barcelona, from almost nothing, pulled one back in first half. Stoppage time, Pedri with a brilliant cross to the far post and Marcus Rashford with his first goal in La Liga. A brilliant volley, getting Barca back into the game. And Barca, for as bad as they were and as much as they could have been out of sight in the first half, I think it's fair to say even in these circumstances, they were the better side in the second half until Sevilla's late goals in stoppage time. They won a penalty. Alejandro Balde won a penalty, which Robert Lewandowski missed. There were 2 good chances for Ronnie Bardghji when he came on for Ferran Torres. One, he shot straight at the keeper. Another one as well, which perhaps he could have squared on the second chance. And then Sevilla's late goals came with Barca really sort of pushing for that draw, really. The third and the fourth both come in the 90th minute and beyond. Rik, where's the best place to start?
I have a few positives, and I don't think that is the best place to start, so I'm not going to mention them yet. But I spent a few minutes before we started recording thinking about positives because we were at risk, given the performance yesterday, of this being a very negativo pod. But I think you got to start with the negativo. And the big question for me is why Barca played this badly in this game. Against PSG, you could say, it's because Luis Enrique's PSG are a very good team, even missing those players, and they really outshone Barca in the end. But why against this Sevilla team, which is an improvement on Sevilla teams the last couple of years, but not, they're still far from their peak Sevilla levels when they were winning all those Europa Leagues in the sort of early, mid-North season 10s. Why did they play so badly in this game? And, I mean, again, it shouldn't be the case, as I said in the last pod, given Barca had the whole summer off. But they did look very, very tired. And maybe it's just the sort of coming back from the summer and then straight into Hansi Flick's quite demanding system, in terms of physically demanding, and then just not being able to cope with it until you build up that sort of fitness level you need for it again. So hopefully that's something that can be worked out, because it's 2 bad results for different reasons in a row.
Yeah, I mean, there are circumstances. I know people don't like to talk about circumstances, excuses, etc. But Barcelona obviously coming into this game off the back of that Paris Saint-Germain defeat. I don't think this certainly is an excuse, but perhaps there was an element of sort of like feeling sorry for themselves, down on themselves on the back of that game, just behind the slow start. But also the fact they were missing players. Obviously, Pau Cubarsí said after the game that, the chances that Sevilla create all come from the front. I don't think he was necessarily singling out the forwards, but it's clear that Barcelona aren't pressing as they did as a unit from front to back. That's something which needs to be addressed, but it's also something that's obviously going to drop off when you're probably without your best pressing players in terms of, Rafinha. I don't know if it's unfair or sort of slightly sort of, what's the word, but to include Gavi and Firmino in that list, because obviously they wouldn't have been, starters last season when Barca were fully functioning. But you do miss something without having their sort of tenacity and intensity. Obviously, Lamine Yamal was missing as well. So there's a lot of players missing there. Obviously, Lewandowski, Rashford don't press to that same level. I mean, from there was just so many sort of poor performances, especially in the first half. Pedri called it dreadful. He said he couldn't remember Barca playing as poorly.
Well, I mean, it seems very difficult for me to have to have Lewandowski, Rashford, and Dani Olmo in the same team and ask the team to play a game that's dependent on them pressing well.
Yeah, but again, it was down to everyone. I mean, Rashford was good with the ball, as was Pedri at times in the end of the first half, second half, and Chesney actually considering he's conceded 4 goals, made quite a few good saves, especially at 1-0. But yeah, I mean, Frenkie de Jong was way off the boil in the first half. Araujo, maybe not his fault for the penalty, but he puts himself in those positions again and again. Obviously, a slightly harsh call. Koundé off it again, perhaps fouled in the build-up to the second goal. And if you're giving that penalty on Araujo, it's similar sort of, intensity, and you probably have to give one and give the other, or not give either of them. Ferran Torres, Lewandowski, just off their game. Tony, where do we start from that performance from your point of view?
No, I think that what I have read and seen in the last hours is like a lot of people not trying to make a big issue, trying to make apocalypse Monday today. I've seen a lot of people, for me, crazy people saying that yes, this plan is already gone. They found the magic potion to stop Flick's style, blah, 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 blah. Okay, the truth is that we can say whatever we want, no? But I know that if my grandma had wheels, it's still valid, but if Lewandowski scores, it's 2-2, no? So what I want to tell you is that I don't think it's related with kind of chaos, kind of all these things that people is saying that this style is not working anymore. I don't think it's nothing like that. You can perfectly lose a game. In fact, remember how many games lost Barca last November. And if you were not stupid in Milano, you would have been on the final of Champions League. So, for me, no drama, keep calm. The people is getting crazy with a defeat. Yes, for me, there are 2 reasons that can explain the I don't know if bad moment, the lower moment that Barca is living. The one more general and not totally related with the game of yesterday, you can all more or less see it against Paris Saint-Germain, Oviedo, Real Sociedad, is that maybe that Barca is not, because of there are some injuries and there is no backup, and some players have played a lot in the last 21 days, you are not pressing that high, that sharp. And this, yes, we have said about this. With the football that Hansi Flick wants, if you don't press 120%, you are dead. Check if you haven't seen the clip of the video of the second goal of Paris Saint-Germain in the 90 minutes. Paris Saint-Germain has the ball almost on the midfield line. The defense of Barca is in the midfield line, but no one is pressing the player who has the ball. So it's obvious that it's so easy to destroy you. So for me, this is one point that you have lost strength in the when it comes to pressing the opponent. And second thing, for me, it's directly specific reason of what happened in Sevilla is that Almeida, Sevilla's coach, wanted to make a Barca a 1-against-1 duel. All 3 midfielders of Barca were totally covered by Goumet, Sow and Mendy. So what does it mean when a coach does this? The game goes to a 1-to-1, it's all full of 1-to-1 duels. And without Lamine Yamal, the truth is that Barca has no any profile who is always to tell me, okay, if this game is going to be 1-to-1 game, give me the ball because I'll make the first 1-to-1, and then once I've made the first dribbling, we have advantage, because if a defender comes to me, it means that there is another player free. So this, for me, was a perfect game plan of Almeida, driving the game to the 1-to-1 battle, because he knew that none of the three strikers of Barca was able to do that. Not Rashford, even less Lewandowski, and also not Ferran. So I wouldn't make big analysis. It's football and plan what happened in Sevilla, apart from a loss of fresh legs. Also, this has played a role. But for me, 80% was what I'm telling you, a matter of football, nothing else.
Yeah, there's certainly that well-trodden out football saying comes to mind for me as well, in terms of you don't get too high with the wins, you don't get too low with the defeats. And I certainly think there's a case for that for Barcelona. There's not things to analyse in terms of perhaps the use of players, management of the squad, etc. after the break, how you then sort of counteract teams that do go 1-to-1 and aggressively press you like Sevilla did, because like you say, without Lamine Yamal, you perhaps lose a little bit of that outball. And that was what Pedri spoke about, wouldn't it, Rick? Quite strange to hear Pedri say we didn't know what to do with the ball.
It's very rare to hear Pedri say anything that can be taken as interesting. So for him to come out and say all these things was interesting in itself.
Also, Kouassi said that the team was not pressing, so I have to be brave at that age to say all these things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, for me, I just don't think seeing Ferran Torres on the wing is something we need to see in 2025. We know this doesn't work. And Flick got it right the other day when he was saying, we'll see Torres and Lewandowski, but maybe not at the same time on the pitch. And I think that should be the case. And I would have, even though he missed all those chances when he came on in the second half, Rooney Bartadji, I would have gone with Rooney, because that would help you press. It would give you a bit more width, a bit more sort of a player who seems more comfortable there than Torres is these days. I think it is the high line stuff and what Tony was talking about. I agree. We can't say, throw it all in the bin, get rid of it. But I do think that there's a couple of issues with it that are going to come back in the next few weeks. And one is that obviously opponents have seen Barca do it for a year, and they're getting a little bit better at trying to work out how to beat it. And we saw Newcastle, PSG, and Sevilla score quite similar goals with that sort of low raking cross after getting in behind the defence for a striker to finish. And the other thing is, of course, Barca have lost Inigo Martinez, and even though he was good last season, very good, he had a very good season, I think what Barca are missing really is his brain rather than his sort of performance level. They're missing someone who can lead that high line and know where it should be. And certainly with the rotation Flick's got in, there seems to be no one who's capable of doing it. I mean, you might say Araujo is a leader, but he's not. Obviously, he's the player we've got the most doubts about in terms of being able to play in this defence, in the system. So there's not anyone in there who's, maybe Kubasi could be this guy who can lead the defence in that way and marshal it, basically. Tell the other players where to be.
Tony, we've obviously spoken about the centre-backs a lot post-PSG throughout this season, Flick constantly changing them, but what Rick says there has been quite a common theme in some of the analysis I've seen, both locally in Barcelona and internationally, but that loss of Inigo Martinez, do you think Barca are feeling that at the moment, or do you think it's just, other symptoms?
A ver. I think it's easy to say that Barca misses Inigo. It's easy to say this. Very easy. Very, 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 very easy. The same that when you have a coffee in your table and you ¿cómo se dice? Lo viertes, lo tumbas. ¿Cómo se dice en inglés?
You spill it.
And you spill it, and then your girlfriend, as if she was your teacher, tells you, I knew it. You are too excited. You need to calm. Sometimes it's nothing related with this.
This happens once a week in the Juan Martí household.
Yes, but it's easy comments. I hate easy comments. I knew it would happen. You are too nervous. You need to calm down because you see what are you doing. There's nothing to do this. It's just that I moved my elbow and I touched it. So saying that we are missing Inigo, it's like easy comment. Why we are missing Inigo? Eric has been great. Christensen has been great. Araujo has been playing more than decent. I still remember the game in Newcastle. So I am more on the line of Pau Cubarsí. If you don't press and you let the opponent having the ball easily, with your defensive line on the midfield, you still could play with Maldini, Puyol, and whoever you want, and still they would be totally knocked, smashed, because it's not depending on your center backs. For me, it's nothing with this. Other thing is, yes, I think you can be missing a little bit Inigo because of his winning mentality, character, pushing pushing the team to press, no one to get relaxed. So in terms of leadership, I think, yes, we are missing Inigo.
Yeah, that's the key for me. I mean, that's what I mean. More than his performance, his mentality and leadership.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tony, you mentioned Kubasi's comments a couple of times. Were you surprised by what he said? Obviously, being an 18-year-old, do you think they could be reflected? Obviously, he didn't single anyone out in particular, but he more or less said it's the pressing from the front, which you can read into it as you want, I guess, whether it's the forwards or the midfielders. It's certainly sort of pushing a little bit away from the debate, as you said, in terms of the defending and the high line, and pushing it more onto how the midfielders and the forwards press.
For me, you have to be very brave to say this, and I don't think I wouldn't say it's a big mistake. I wouldn't make a big thing about this, but between ¿cómo es un acierto? ¿Cómo se dice en inglés? How do you say un acierto?
The success depends on the content.
Okay, between a success or a mistake, this word for me, this is a mistake. Not big, but better have avoided to say this, no? Because in the dressing room, I can imagine that when Lewandowski reads this, tells you, hey, kid, come, let's speak. What's that? Because you cannot say that the defense starts from the beginning and you need to press, because it's obvious that it's true. But it wouldn't be nice if you make a mistake, then you see Lewandowski saying that our centre-back was cheat. So, for me, it's obvious that that's the message. And internally, you can talk about this. But publicly, I would have said, we need to correct things all together as a team. But for me, it's not fair to say this. And even less, when, in my opinion, and we have discussed this with Rik, I think, in the last chapters, Cubarsí is not on his best shape so far.
Yeah. Maybe he learned it from Ilkay Gundogan.
Yeah.
Well, this is also one thing that comes to relate it back to the Inigo leadership and stuff, how much Kubasi perhaps benefited from playing alongside him.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a good point, because people from that they know him tells me that Pau needs to play on the right side of the centre back, not on the left side. So it was much better for him when he was playing with Inigo, because he felt more comfortable playing on the right side.
Yeah, and also they just had that established connection. We'll see how the centre-back situation pans out through the season. We obviously spoke about it quite a lot after the PSG game over on Patreon, and also about Dani Olmo. But Rik, I'm loath to speak about him too much. Obviously, we spoke about him a lot on Thursday after that PSG game. But these are just games when you want your 65 million player to step up, and yes, it's not all on him. You also want Frenkie de Jong to deliver. You also want Lewandowski, Ferran Torres to do stuff. But it just feels a little bit at the moment like Olmo's not ever really delivering when you need him to. His numbers have been limited this season. Obviously contributed in the win against Getafe and Valencia, but they were comfortable wins when he didn't have to do sort of too much above and beyond.
Yeah, and the annoying thing with that is, in a couple of games' time, he'll score a goal from 30 yards, and everyone will say, "Look, Olmo is amazing. He's amazing." But yeah, he's just a bit disappointing for me. And I think Pedri was an issue in this one as well, because we mentioned Olmo, Lewandowski, and Rashford in terms of the pressing. But Pedri normally is very, very good at pressing, but he wasn't in this one. I think he was, as we talked about at the end of the PSG game, looked exhausted. So that's on Flick, as we said, for maybe not managing his minutes correctly in the weeks leading up to the PSG game. And obviously yesterday he was really poor in terms of pressing. But yeah, Olmo, I mean, I've said everything that I can say about him. I mean, we talked about missing Rafinha and we talked about missing Lamine Yamal, but at the moment we're also missing Fermin Lopez, another player who is good at pressing and who is delivering when he plays.
That's the thing, like I said before, it almost feels opportunistic to say missing Fermin Lopez, because like we discussed again after the PSG game, last season he wouldn't have been, a starter in the first choice 11, and perhaps he wouldn't, even now, perhaps Flick would still go Olmo above him. But it does feel like you're really missing his sort of energy, and perhaps it's a little bit falling into that trap that Tony said to do with Inigo, sort of looking back with sort of rose-tinted glasses. And
I can't possibly think that Hansi Flick would have Dani Olmo above Fermin Lopez on form.
No.
I just cannot possibly think that's true. I could see him starting him ahead of him, but not because he thinks he's better and a better player and he's going to do better, but because he wants Fermin Lopez to play in the last 30 minutes and run at people and run at a tired defence, not for any other reason than that.
Yeah. Let's hear that all translates into Rick's ratings then.
Yeah, the ratings are all fairly similar. I mean, Teka gave 6, one of the better ratings. A couple of good saves in the first half. Could save the third goal from Carmona, gets his hand to it. Could maybe keep it out. Koundé 4.5, Araujo 4. On the penalty, we haven't discussed that. There is some debate to be had about the penalty. For me, it's one of those ones where whatever the on-field referee gives, you should just go with that. And that's not what happened. They took it to VAR and they gave the penalty with VAR. It's just clumsy from Araujo. If I was the ref, I can't say whether I would have given a penalty or not. But I don't think I don't feel strongly about it either way.
I don't think it was a penalty for me. Not at all, but it's true that at the end, as Sam said, Araujo makes like a mistake putting the leg on the last moment. You don't need to put the leg there.
The hands on the shirt and upper body
No, but
as well.
the hands is very difficult to see this because I see every week Rudiger and Militao doing this and nothing happens with the hands. For me, the problem is that leg that you put on the final moment that makes Isaac Romero to fall. There was no need to put that leg there.
I agree with Rick. It's not a VAR penalty for me. I'm a very much a sort of high bar VAR man. You get involved if it's. I know this terminology shouldn't be used anymore, but you can't seem to shake away from that clear and obvious thing, can you? That for me is like I still kind of, and I know there's no proper definition, and everyone has their own definition for clear and obvious. But mine's a very high bar for clear and obvious, and that's not a massive on pitch mistake, so you don't get involved.
Yeah, Kubasi 5, Gerard Martin 5, Frankie 5. We saw Frankie and Pedri in this game many times, like shout at their teammates and try and get them to get into better positions, and they were both pretty frustrated. Pedri 5.5, nice assist for Rashford, but as we said, he had overall quite a poor game by his standards. Dani Olmo 4.5, Ferran 4.5, Lewandowski 4.5, and then Rashford, I've given him a 6 for his goal, and also because in the 10 minutes before his goal, he was the first Barca player to kind of wake up and say, "Oh, we need to stop." After Sevilla's second goal win, he was saying, "No, this is not right. We need to play better." And he had a shot that was saved. He had a couple of other good moments. He would have had a nice chance on the left if Lewandowski passed the ball to him instead of passing it straight to a Sevilla defender. Then off the bench, I think Balde, Eric and Rooney, I gave them all 6s. They're all okay. Balde won the penalty. Rooney missed some good chances. There's one, which has been some debate about this as well, whether Rooney should have passed to Rashford with his shot, which he hit straight at the goalkeeper. And to be honest, in that position, it's quite fair for him to shoot. But knowing Rashford is a better finisher than him, I mean, he should know this. Maybe you pass to Rashford.
No, you absolutely shoot that. You cannot
really
blame. You can say it's a crap shot, but you can't say you should pass there. He's shaken off his man. He's done really well to get into that position. He's basically 1-on-1 with the keeper. You'd be a moron to pass the ball there. I understand afterwards saying great for the thing, but if you're a forward and you're in that position 1-on-1, you're completely understandable shooting.
If you're Rooney Bartagi and you've got Rashford there, I don't know. I mean, I can understand why he shot. I'm not saying he should have passed. But if he had passed, I'm pretty sure
it opens up and you've got a millisecond to make your decision. I think it's good that his instinct is to shoot.
Yeah, maybe. It's the correct instinct, even if it was a woeful shot.
Well, I think a little bit too generous with Olmo, no? With a 4.5, but more or less, almost all the players deserved to fail the exam. But Olmo for me would have never been more than 3 out of 10.
Just to finish then, because since we last spoke, Lamine Yamal's been ruled out again with an injury. We had a little bit of unnecessary drama really on Friday. Obviously, he returned from that groin injury against Real Sociedad, played 90 minutes against Paris Saint-Germain when he sort of re-injured the groin. On Friday, he was named in the Spain squad, and then it came out that he was re-injured, and Barca have said he'll be out for 2 to 3 weeks, which should have him back around the time that domestic football resumes for Girona or Olympiacos, certainly for the Clásico. Although Hansi Flick says we can't predict anything with this injury. We don't know when he will be back, if it'll be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, if he'll be fit for the Clásico. Rik, what did you make of the whole handling of the Lamine Yamal situation on Friday? And any deeper concerns with this recurring groin injury for an 18-year-old kid?
Well, I don't really care, to be honest, about the Flick De La Fuente stuff. I can see it from both their perspectives. Flick obviously thinking that he was used too much. De La Fuente thinking, well, I'm the Spain manager. Spain is the most important thing, and I'll play my best player whenever I want. So I can see it from both their perspectives. The worrying thing is the groin thing, because it's not an injury that's easy to solve. As Flick said on Friday, it's not simple as, you do your recovery and then it's fixed. You don't know how long it could go on for. I imagine, there's almost no doubt, I think we'll see Lamine in the Clásico. I think whatever they did to him, gave him those painkiller injections for Spain, for those World Cup qualifiers, Barca will do exactly the same thing if Lamine needs to play in the Clásico. So I wouldn't be too worried about that, but it is worrying that he's got this issue, and hopefully they can sort of dotify him until then to try and fix it.
But again, that's the short-termism of both club and country, both fighting for short-term goals. Obviously, Barca Clásico this season, Spain want him for World Cup next summer, etc. And perhaps no one thinking about the long-term health of Lamine Yamal. Tony, do you think there's anything sort of unsaid here? Do you think Lamine's actually not too bad, and Barca just didn't want to risk him against Sevilla, and then that also guaranteed he wouldn't go with Spain?
Yeah, that's what it seems. Sorry. Sorry for that. That's what it seems. But honestly, when I was in the battle as a journalist, I normally try to find out and ask these questions. Right now, I have to admit that I don't have hot information. In my opinion, it seems that Lamine was fit enough to play in Sevilla. In my opinion. But in this war with the Spanish Federation, call it ego or call it whatever you want, Barca preferred preventing Lamine to play both games. Barca preferred to think on what's coming next after the break than having Lamine in Sevilla. So when Barca saw himself forced to say, okay, if Lamine plays in Sevilla, he will have to play with national team, and maybe he will have pain or bigger pain after the break. We choose to put him out of the game in Sevilla, but then we have him with us, and then he can be recovered. So what I want to tell you is that for me, Lamine would have played if it was the final of the Champions League. No doubt about this, would have played. But in the war with the Spanish Federation, Barca made a plan, and that plan was, okay, I'm going to play my cards. Lamine is going to be out of this last game, then he's not going with you, and then he's more or less fresh to play after the break. What it's totally certain and confirmed it's that there is a big war between Barca and De La Fuente, and let's see if they can solve it. Otherwise, it's going to be hard issue. It's going to be hard issue because one to each other, they can punish him quite often because it's full of international breaks. So let's see. But I just wanted to add that yes, I think Lamine. It's more part of plan of the club than a real injury of Lamine. That's what I think.
Yeah, what I would say, and I think I've said on the podcast before, is I wouldn't defend De La Fuente. I think some of I wouldn't completely defend him. I think some of his decisions have been questionable, right back to Pedri with the Olympic Games, etc., and the under-21s, whatnot, through to Gavi, through to Lamine Yamal now. But I would defend him in so much as this idea that he's deliberately trying to sort of harm Barca or Lamine Yamal, because I just can't get my head around the idea how that would benefit him, Lamine Yamal, and Spain's chances at the World Cup next summer. I think it's just a case of them just completely mismanaging the situation. They've not got a grip on it at all, and I think that's quite clear when you go to when you watch the Spain press conference on Friday, and Real Madrid leaning journalists are completely holding him to task and basically saying, like, look, you're taking risks with Lamine Yamal, what are you doing here? You're not telling us the full story, etc. It becomes quite clear that Flick's version is perhaps got more weight than De La Fuente's.
Yes, but you are forgetting something, In the story of the last injury of Lamine Yamal, when he arrived injured from the national team, the Spanish Federation told to all journalists that they didn't do nothing to Lamine. They lied. They lied, journalists, and at the end they found out that yes, they gave Lamine, I don't know how to say in English, que le dieron un antiinflamatorio pinchándole en el culo. I don't know how do you say this in English.
An injection, anti-inflammatory injection in his bottom.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to go away, this battle with the federation as well, because obviously amidst all this Lamine Yamal situation, it almost went unnoticed on Friday that Marc Bernal was also called up to the under-21s after recovering from his ACL. Obviously, he's not played more than 11 minutes in the game for Barca, and he was expected to go to the under-21s. Hansi Flick said he had no idea what they were hoping to get from him, and it seemed like a difficult situation. And within an hour, I think he'd been pulled out of the under-21 squad. Rik, I thought you wanted to end on some siempre positivos.
Oh yeah, we talked about most of them already, to be honest. But just so we don't end on a downer, Rashford, he's got a goal or an assist in how many games in a row? 5 or 6, maybe 7, if including the England game. So that's good. And the fact that, I mean, we kind of mentioned this, but that was maybe Barca's worst half, the first half of that Sevilla game in the Hansi Flick era. And yet they were pretty close to turning it around with the penalty missed by Lewandowski. It could have been 2-2. They had those 3 chances for Rooney Bargi after that. They'll have Rafinha back, Lamine back, Fermin back after the international break. Last season they had all these, shit November that we talked about. We mentioned those games earlier, and they came back and they won domestic treble. So I think that as rough as a 4-1 result sounds and was yesterday, I do think overall that we've got plenty of exciting times to come after the international break.
Yeah, we'll be back after the international break on the Monday following Barca's game against Girona. Yet to be confirmed where it will be played, but we're presuming at Montjuic for now. There's still maybe a small % chance they get back into Camp Nou for that game. We will, of course, be on Patreon during the break with Q&As and a couple of special episodes coming up during the break, perhaps some analysis of Spain as well if it's particularly relevant to Barcelona's players. In the meantime, stay positive.